The leaderboard was set. Scottie Scheffler had just birdied 3 of his first 4 holes, racing to 9 under and putting the field on notice. Rory McIlroy was lurking, 3 shots back, ready to make his move. Lowry, still nursing the wounds of a bear-trapped nightmare, was grinding through another round at Bay Hill. Then, without warning, everything stopped. Sirens, evacuations, players scrambling off the course, fans frozen in place, phones out, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. The PGA Tour didn't announce a weather delay. They didn't call for a temporary halt. They suspended round 3 entirely. And the rumors spreading through the galleries are more terrifying than any thunderstorm. Saturday at Bay Hill dawned clear and cool, the kind of Florida morning that makes you remember why so many golfers live here. The fairways were pristine, the greens rolling true, the crowds buzzing with anticipation of a weekend finish that promised fireworks. Scottie Scheffler, the world #1, picked up right where he left off. After opening with rounds of 68 and 70, he came out firing on Saturday, birdieing 3 of his first 4 holes to reach 9 under and seize control of the tournament. Rory McIlroy, chasing his 2nd Bay Hill title and a 30th career PGA Tour win, was 3 shots back, lurking in the shadows. Lowry, still carrying the weight of his Cognizant Classic collapse, was grinding through another round, trying to find the form that had abandoned him at the worst possible moment. Everything was normal, everything was perfect, until it wasn't. The first sign of trouble came from the security personnel stationed around the 12th green. Their radios crackled, their postures stiffened. They began speaking urgently into their wrist mics, eyes scanning the sky, then the crowds, then the sky again. Players noticed, fans noticed, the broadcast team noticed. Then the sirens started. Not the distant wail of emergency vehicles on some nearby highway. Close sirens, on-property sirens, the kind that make you stop whatever you're doing and pay attention. Within minutes, PGA Tour officials were on the course, pulling players aside, speaking in hushed tones that did nothing to calm the growing panic. Carts began appearing on cart paths, ferrying officials to different corners of the property. The scoreboards flickered. Then the announcement came. Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, the PGA Tour has made the decision to suspend round 3 of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Please follow the instructions of security personnel and evacuate the area calmly. Evacuate, not pause, not delay, evacuate. The crowd didn't know how to react. Some stood frozen, phones out, recording everything. Others began moving toward exits, confusion etched on their faces. Players were escorted off the course, many without their clubs, leaving behind the round they'd been in the middle of. Scheffler, standing on the 5th fairway, was ushered into a cart and driven away without explanation. McIlroy, still on the practice green, watched as the course emptied around him. Lowry, somewhere in the middle of his round, disappeared into the crowd. The Arnold Palmer Invitational had been stopped, but no one knew why. The moment the evacuation announcement crackled through the speakers at Bay Hill, the rumor mill exploded. Without official information, fans and players alike filled the void with speculation, some plausible, some terrifying, some downright absurd. The weather theory. The most logical explanation was weather. Central Florida in March is notorious for sudden thunderstorms, lightning strikes, and the kind of afternoon downpours that can flood a course in minutes. But as fans looked skyward, they saw nothing but blue skies. No clouds, no wind, no indication that Mother Nature had any interest in interrupting the tournament. Still, some clung to the weather theory. Maybe it's a cell they're tracking on radar, one fan speculated, something that hasn't arrived yet. But as minutes passed and the sky remained clear, that theory lost steam. The security threat. A darker theory began circulating through the galleries. Multiple witnesses reported seeing increased security presence around the clubhouse before the evacuation, uniformed officers arriving in unmarked vehicles, plainclothes personnel speaking urgently into radios. a general sense of heightened alert that had nothing to do with golf. Heard someone say there was a threat, one fan whispered to another, the words spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Don't know what kind, don't know how serious, but they're not taking chances. The Phoenix Open, just weeks earlier, had seen record arrests and crowd control issues, but this was different. This wasn't about drunk fans or rowdy behavior. This was about something else entirely. The player rumors. On the course, players were being pulled aside and given instructions that varied depending on who you asked. Some were told it was a precautionary evacuation. Others heard security situation. A few were told nothing at all, just ushered into carts and driven away without explanation. Scottie Scheffler, standing on the fifth fairway at 9 under and in complete control of the tournament, was escorted off without being allowed to mark his ball. Rory McIlroy, still on the practice green when the sirens started, watched as the course emptied around him. Lowry, somewhere in the middle of his round, disappeared into the crowd, his caddy carrying his clubs behind him. The players' silence spoke volumes. No one was commenting, no one was posting. The usual social media updates went dark, and that silence was more terrifying than any announcement could have been. The clubhouse lockdown. Inside the clubhouse, a different scene was unfolding. Players who had already finished their rounds were told to stay put. Family members were directed to a designated area. Media were escorted to a holding room with no windows and no updates. Nobody's saying anything, one reporter texted from inside. We're just sitting here. Phones work, but no one has information. It's like they're waiting for something. The waiting stretched from minutes into an hour, then 2 hours, then 3, and still no explanation came. 3 hours after the evacuation began, the PGA Tour finally broke its silence. The statement came through official channels, a carefully worded press release that landed in inboxes at 4:47 p.m. Eastern Time. It read, "The PGA Tour, in coordination with local law enforcement and tournament security, made the decision to suspend Round 3 of the Arnold Palmer Invitational due to a credible security threat directed at the event. The safety of our players, fans, volunteers, and staff is our highest priority. We are working closely with authorities to assess the situation and will provide further updates as information becomes available. The resumption of play will be determined based on the ongoing investigation." Credible security threat. Those 3 words sent a chill through the golf world. Within minutes, additional details began to emerge from law enforcement sources. The threat, according to officials speaking on condition of anonymity, involved a specific individual who had made statements online suggesting violence at the tournament. The individual had been monitored by authorities for several hours before the decision was made to evacuate. This wasn't a vague threat, one source explained. This was specific. The individual named the event, referenced specific players, and indicated an intention to cause harm. At that point, you don't take chances. The individual had not yet been apprehended at the time of the evacuation. That fact alone explained the urgency. If the threat was credible and the suspect was still at large, clearing the course was the only option. Players were informed first, then tournament personnel, then the public. The phased approach was intentional, to avoid panic while ensuring everyone's safety. Scottie Scheffler, reached by phone after being escorted to his rental home, declined to comment. Rory McIlroy's team issued a brief statement. Rory is safe and in communication with tour officials. He appreciates everyone's concern and asks for privacy. Lowry posted a simple message on social media. Safe, thanks for the messages. Hope everyone else is too. The golf world collectively exhaled. Everyone was safe, but the questions lingered. Who was behind the threat? Were they still out there? And what happens now to a tournament suspended in the middle of its 3rd round with no clear timeline for resumption? The hours following the evacuation were chaos wrapped in silence. Local law enforcement, FBI agents, and PGA Tour security personnel swarmed the Bay Hill clubhouse, transforming what had been a celebration of golf into a command center. The tournament was suspended indefinitely. Players were told to stay away. Fans who had paid thousands for hospitality packages were left with nothing but confusion and a promise of refunds at a later date. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the threat originated on an obscure online forum popular with individuals who harbor grievances against public figures. A user had posted multiple messages over a 48-hour period, specifically naming the Arnold Palmer Invitational, referencing high-value targets in attendance, and making statements that law enforcement analysts determined to be operational in nature. The language was specific, one investigator told GOLF SWINGX on condition of anonymity. This wasn't someone venting general anger. This was someone describing intent, describing method, and describing timing. Once we saw that, we had minutes, not hours, to act. The decision to suspend the round entirely, rather than simply delay it, was based on one critical factor. The suspect's location was unknown. If they were already inside the gates, pausing play wouldn't neutralize the threat. Only clearing the course completely would ensure safety. By late Saturday evening, law enforcement had identified a person of interest. The individual, a 47-year-old Florida resident with no prior criminal record, was located at a motel approximately 30 miles from Bay Hill. He was taken into custody without incident. A search of his vehicle revealed no weapons, but investigators seized electronics that they believe contain evidence of the planning process. The situation is contained, the FBI announced in a brief statement. There is no ongoing threat to the public or to the tournament. But contained is not the same as resolved. The investigation continues, and the tournament remains in limbo. Sunday morning arrived at Bay Hill under a sky that seemed to mock the chaos of the previous day. Clear, calm, perfect golf weather. But the fairways remained empty. The PGA Tour announced at 8 a.m. that Round 3 would not resume on Sunday. Instead, tournament officials, working alongside law enforcement, would determine a path forward that prioritized safety while salvaging some semblance of competition. By noon, a plan emerged. The tournament would be shortened to 54 holes. Round 3 would resume Monday morning at 8 a.m., with players returning to the exact spots where they'd been interrupted. Scottie Scheffler, standing on the fifth fairway at 9 under, would have the chance to complete what he'd started. Rory McIlroy, 3 shots back, would get his opportunity to chase. But the decision wasn't without controversy. Some players argued that the suspension, while necessary, had fundamentally altered the competitive dynamic. Others worried about the mental toll of trying to refocus after 48 hours of uncertainty and fear. Scheffler, when reached for comment, was characteristically measured. "It's a strange situation, obviously," he said, "but we have to adapt. That's what professional golfers do. We'll show up Monday, pick up where we left off, and try to finish the tournament the right way." McIlroy echoed the sentiment. "Safety first, always. The tour made the right call. Now we have a chance to finish what we started. That's all you can ask for." For Shane Lowry, the interruption was perhaps the most cruel twist. Still carrying the weight of his Cognizant Classic collapse, he'd been in the middle of grinding through another round when the sirens started. Now he'd have to wait another 48 hours to exorcise those demons. But as the sun set on Sunday at Bay Hill, one thing was clear. The system had worked. A credible threat had been identified, acted upon, and neutralized. No one was hurt, no one was harmed. The tournament would go on. And the golf world, for a moment, paused to appreciate that sometimes the most important victories happen off the course. For more coverage of this developing story and its aftermath, subscribe and hit the notification bell.